Part 1, The Golden Cage. My name is Jasper Thorne, and I'm a pretty unremarkable shiatsu practitioner. If there's anything remarkable about me, it's the $200,000 of student debt hanging around my neck. So when my agent, Frank, called me breathless about a new client, a top-tier exec needed someone yesterday, I bit, which is how I ended up on the top floor of the tallest skyscraper in the Seattle financial district at a company called Atherton & Company. Jasper Thorne, right this way. Ms. Atherton is expecting you. The woman leading me was impeccable. A walking LinkedIn profile in a perfectly tailored emerald suit and platinum-rimmed glasses. She moved with an efficiency that bordered on aggressive, and her eyes sized me up like I was a piece of office furniture pending approval. She pushed open a heavy mahogany door, and I saw my client, Vivian Atherton. She was sitting in front of a massive floor-to-ceiling window, one hand pressed to her temple. The late afternoon sun framed her in gold, but none of its warmth seemed to touch her. She wore a midnight blue power suit so sharply tailored it could cut glass. She was like a statue carved from Arctic ice, undeniably beautiful and just as cold. Ms. Atherton, he's here, the assistant Lydia said softly. Vivian Atherton looked up, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped 10 circ C. Are the previous candidates all you could find? This one looks no different, she said, her voice a low, cool murmur laced with exhaustion and undisguised impatience. Are your hands clean? I have rules here. First, no idle chatter. Second, you look only where you're supposed to. And third, most importantly, don't even think about using any cheap tricks to get my attention. I just nodded. Lady, you got it all wrong, I thought. I'm just here for the paycheck. Lydia pointed me toward a portable massage table in the corner. I washed and sanitized my hands, ready to get to work. Vivian lay face down on the table, maintaining that unapproachable aura. Begin, she commanded, her eyes closed. The moment my fingers touched the tense muscles of her shoulders, a voice, crystal clear and practically screaming with frustration, exploded inside my head. My skull is going to split open. These idiots. How can they find 8 separate flaws in one project proposal? I'm going to fire every last one of them. If this guy isn't any good, he's the first to go. My hand flinched. What the hell? Was I hearing things? I tentatively pressed a pressure point on her shoulder. Oh, yes, that's it. Harder. Ugh, that's good. No, don't let it show. Maintain your authority. Can't let him think he has the upper hand. I froze. I think I just stumbled upon a very, very big secret. So this was what Frank meant by a unique opportunity. My superpower, a decade late, turned out to be a telepathy subscription that only works during massages. I pushed down the shock and focused. Her muscles were like concrete, a clear result of chronic stress and long hours hunched over a desk. I started working, adjusting my technique based on the live feed of her internal commentary. Yes, right there. A little lower to the left. How did he know? Oh my God, pressure. It's nothing like those other quacks. Is he massaging my soul? This is incredible. Out loud, she said flatly. The pressure is adequate. I added a little more force. Yes. I could die right now. No, get it together, Vivian. You're the boss. Out loud. Did you forget to eat breakfast? I said nothing. This woman's inner monologue had its own zip code. I switched techniques, using my knuckles to work the muscles along her spine. Oh, wow, I'm melting. Cannot let this one go. Absolutely not. I'll have Lydia draw up a contract. Whatever it takes. Out loud, her voice was muffled by the headrest. Barely acceptable. The 15-minute trial session ended. I stepped back. Vivian sat up slowly, rolling her neck. The sharp, tense lines around her eyes had softened considerably. She looked at me, a flicker of genuine curiosity in her gaze. Your name is Jasper. Yes, Ms. Atherton. She didn't say anything else, just gave a subtle nod to Lydia. Immediately, her inner voice flared up again. Quick, get the contract. Don't let him leave. Tell him I was mildly satisfied. But he gets a chance. I had to physically bite my cheek to keep from laughing. This ice queen was kind of adorable. Lydia, understanding the silent command, retrieved a folder from a drawer and handed it to me. Mr. Thorne, this is the personal wellness consultant contract our firm has drafted. Ms. Atherton was generally satisfied with your service today, she said, adjusting her glasses with an air that screamed, You just won the lottery. I took the contract. The moment I opened it, my eyebrows shot up. Party A, Vivian Atherton. Party B, Jasper Thorne. Term, 1 year. Duties, serve as the exclusive wellness consultant to Party A. Available 24/7 on call for physical therapy and wellness services. Salary, $15,000 per month. After taxes. 15 grand a month. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was a golden ticket. I could pay off my debt and still have a hefty savings. But as my eyes traveled further down the page, my smile froze. The additional clauses read like a deal with the devil. During the term of employment, the employee may not provide massage services to any person other than Party A, may not leave the city without prior approval, may not disclose any information pertaining to Party A. There were over 30 clauses, essentially making it a high-priced indenture. As I hesitated, Vivian's mental broadcast kicked in again. Why isn't he saying anything? Is the money not enough? Are the terms too strict? Damn it. That technique was 1 in a million. If he walks out today, I'll never find another one like him. Maybe I should offer more. I cleared my throat and placed the contract back on the desk. Ms. Atherton, Lydia, this contract... I dragged out the words, putting on my best, this is a tough one face. Vivian's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. Here we go. He's going to make a demand. As long as it's not outrageous, just agree to it. Lydia, help me out here. Lydia immediately spoke up. Mr. Thorne, is the salary not to your satisfaction? This is already at the very top of the industry standard. I shook my head. The money isn't the main issue. It's the 24/7 on-call clause. It's a bit restrictive. I'm a pretty low-key guy. I like to travel a bit, and I need my personal time. I watched Vivian's reaction as I spoke. Her face was a mask of indifference, but her mind was a battlefield. Low-key, what kind of excuse is that? I offer him 15 grand a month, and he wants to slack off. Unbelievable. But God, my neck hasn't felt this good in years. Fine. Geniuses are allowed to be eccentric. I'll allow it. So, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that during business hours, I'm all yours. But after hours, I'd like my time to be my own. Of course, if there's a genuine emergency, I can be available. But that would be considered overtime and billed as such, I said calmly. I was learning from the best. This was just business. Overtime? He has the nerve to ask for overtime. I'll give him overtime. Vivian exchanged a look with Lydia. Lydia clearly wanted to object, but was silenced with a single glare. Done, Vivian said. I was ecstatic, but kept my face neutral. Also, I'll need a private office or lounge where I won't be disturbed. He wants to be comfortable, does he? Fine. I'll build him a palace if I have to. Done, she repeated. One last thing, I said, holding up a finger. When I work, I like it to be quiet, and I enjoy a good cup of coffee. So, in my office, I'd like a decent espresso machine and a selection of high-quality beans. This was a total whim, just to see how far I could push her. Her response in my head was instantaneous. Good taste. Knows pour-over from his instant. At least he isn't a complete savage. Approved, no problem. Approved, no problem, Vivian said. She turned to her assistant. Lydia, revise the contract. Give Mr. Thorne everything he asked for. Lydia looked like she had just swallowed a bug, but she replied dutifully, Yes, Miss Atherton. A new contract appeared moments later. I feigned a careful review then, spurred on by a frantic mental chorus of sign it, sign it, sign it. From my new boss, I signed my name. Pleasure doing business with you, Ms. Atherton, I said, extending my hand. Vivian looked at me, hesitated for a second, and then placed her cool hand in mine for a brief, firm shake. The contact was fleeting, but it was long enough for one last thought to slip through. His hands, so warm. I wonder how they'd feel. Stop it, Vivian. What are you thinking? Be professional. I looked down, hiding the smile that threatened to take over my entire face. This job was going to be a lot more interesting than I thought. Part 2. The silent riot and the fraud accusation. Next day, I officially started at Atherton & Company. My title was President's Personal Wellness Consultant, which was a fancy way of saying I gave massages to one person. Lydia showed me to my private lounge right next to the corner office. It wasn't huge, but it was chic and comfortable. A top-of-the-line massage table, a plush sofa, and even a small wet bar. The espresso machine I requested was already set up, complete with a full pour-over kit and several bags of expensive single-origin coffee beans. Mr. Thorne, your job is to be on standby here. Please don't wander the halls without being summoned by Ms. Atherton. If you need anything, just let me know, Lydia instructed before clicking away on her heels. And so my dream job began. Every morning at 9 o'clock, I'd stroll into the office, clock in, and disappear into my sanctuary. I'd grind some beans, brew a perfect cup of coffee, and settle onto the sofa with a book, or scroll through TikTok. Vivian was a workaholic. My days were mostly quiet. Only during her lunch break or after 5 would she appear, looking drained and ask for a 15 or 30-minute session. Those sessions were the highlight of my day. I got a front row seat to her silent, blistering takedowns of her incompetent subordinates, her razor-sharp analyses of competitors, and even her deep regret over eating a second piece of tiramisu at lunch. The woman who was a perfectly calculating queen to the outside world was an absolute riot on the inside, and I became the most mysterious and laziest person in the entire company. Everyone knew a Mr. Thorne had been hired by the big boss for a ridiculous amount of money, but nobody knew what I actually did. I never left my office. Yet my salary was rumored to be higher than a department head's. Before long, the gossip started. You hear about that Mr. Thorne? Total nepotism hire. Must be some distant cousin of Miss Atherton. Cousin, please. Total boy toy. All soft hands and a pretty face. You know the type. Sure, but keep it down. Roderick Thorne from marketing tried to peek into his office last week, and Lydia practically ripped his head off. I'd overhear these snippets in the break room. I ignored all of it. They could talk all they wanted. The direct deposits into my bank account were very real. But trouble had a way of finding me. One afternoon while I was admiring a new coffee grinder, there was a knock on the door. Assuming it was Lydia, I called out, "Come in." The door opened to reveal a pot-bellied, balding man in his 50s. His name tag read, Roderick Thorne, Vice President. The very same VP who'd reportedly been chewed out by Lydia. He squinted at me, his eyes raking me up and down. "You're Jasper Cole? That's me. Can I help you, Mr. Thorne?" I put down the grinder. "Can a guy say hello?" He sneered, wandering around my lounge. His gaze landed on the expensive coffee setup. His expression a toxic mix of jealousy and contempt. "You got it made, hot kid. So young, no ambition. Just playing with your little toys. The rest of us are out here bleeding for this company, and you're in here making lattes." I got the message. He was here to pick a fight. I wasn't in the mood. I picked up my phone. "Mr. Thorne, this is the president's private lounge. As far as I know, you can't just walk in here without an appointment. Would you like me to get Lydia for you?" Roderick's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. "You," he sputtered, pointing a stubby finger at me. "Don't get cocky. I'm going to find out what kind of dirt you have on her. What makes you so special? You're nothing but a fraud, a leech." Just then, the door swung open again. Vivian stood there, her expression colder than a Seattle winter. Lydia was right behind her, clearly on their way to a meeting. "Rick, what are you doing in here?" Vivian's voice was devoid of any warmth. Roderick's bluster vanished instantly. He stammered, trying to defend himself. Ms. Atherton, I just wanted to know what this consultant actually does. The company's in the middle of a major push. Everyone is working around the clock. Why does he get a private office and a huge salary for doing nothing? It's not fair to the other employees. He puffed out his chest as if he were a champion of the people. Vivian ignored him, her gaze fixed on me, her brow tight. I knew that look. Her migraine was coming on. When did my decisions require your approval? She said icily. Get out! Defeated, Roderick turned to leave. At the door, he shot one last glare at me, mouthing the word fraud. I just shrugged. Dude, I thought, you have no idea. You're about to get a front row seat to what I can do, because your boss's migraine alert is officially a DEFCON 1. The atmosphere in the Spain conference room was heavy enough to crush rock. Atherton and Company was in a video conference with a major overseas client, negotiating an investment worth billions. Roderick Thorne, as one of the project leads, was sweating under the lights, his presentation full of hot air. And at the head of the table, Vivian Atherton was growing paler by the second. Lydia had called me in. I stood in the corner, a ghost in the machine, but I could clearly hear Vivian's internal battle. My head is splitting. That idiot Rick. The data in his Plan B is a train wreck. He's presenting it anyway. The risk is insane, but Plan A is too conservative. The client will never go for it. What do I do? If I stop him now, we look unprepared. A fine sheen of sweat appeared on her forehead. Her temple throbbed, but she maintained a facade of perfect calm. The client on the screen, a sharp-eyed German man, picked up on the weakness. He asked a few pointed questions that cut right to the heart of Plan B's flaws. Roderick stammered, unable to form a coherent answer. The air in the room solidified. All eyes turned to Vivian, waiting for her to save them. That's when she caught my eye. It was my cue. As a dozen pairs of shocked eyes followed me, I walked calmly from my corner to the head of the table, stopping directly behind Vivian's chair. Roderick looked like his eyes were about to pop out of his head. Ms. Atherton, this is a meeting. What is he doing? Vivian closed her eyes, ignoring him. She squeezed out one word through clenched teeth. Fix it. Faster. Feels like my brain is on fire. Is he going to be able to do this? In front of everyone. This is so humiliating, but I can't take it anymore. Plan B is dead in the water. Plan A is safe, but it's weak. I just need something, someone, to give me the confidence to make a choice. Her thoughts were a chaotic storm of pain and anxiety. I took a deep breath. My thumbs began to move, finding the precise pressure points to release the tension coiling in her head. A steady, powerful warmth flowed from my fingers. At the same time, I leaned in close, my voice a low murmur only she could hear. Sometimes the most direct, stable path carries the least risk. My voice was barely a whisper, but Vivian's entire body went rigid. Her eyes flew open. The shock that ripped through her mind was like a tidal wave. How did he know what I was thinking? Was that a coincidence? A stable path? Least risk. Plan A. Yes, that's it. Plan A is the right move. It was like a lightning bolt had cleared the fog in her mind. My massage had eased the physical pain, and my words had given her the final push she needed. Her entire presence shifted. My apologies, gentlemen, she said, turning to the video screen with a smile that was pure, uncut confidence. The Plan B Thorne just presented was merely a contingency. In fact, our primary recommendation is Plan A. She took control, her thoughts clear, her logic flawless. She laid out the strengths of Plan A, addressing the client's earlier concerns with new data and projections. In her hands, the conservative plan was transformed into a masterful, low-risk, high-reward strategy. The faces on the screen nodded, their skepticism replaced by impressed smiles. The other executives in the room stared at Vivian with awe, and then at me with something that started as confusion, morphed into shock, and finally settled on a kind of reverence. Only Roderick Thorne stood there, his face shifting between shades of green and white, looking like a complete fool. The meeting, against all odds, was a resounding success. After the call ended, Vivian stood up, and the room erupted in applause. She didn't smile. She just gave Roderick a look that could freeze fire. He visibly sagged. Then her eyes found me, and in those cool, clear depths, for the first time, I saw an emotion I couldn't quite name. Her inner voice, however, was perfectly clear. Who? Who is he? Coincidence, or is he actually my lucky charm? I gave her a small smile and a subtle nod before melting back into my corner. Mission accomplished. After my dramatic boardroom intervention, my status at the company did a complete 180. No one was quite sure what I did, but the consensus was that Mr. Thorne is on another level. The whispers stopped. People started greeting me in the hallways with a respectful, "Morning, Mr. Thorne." The person whose attitude changed the most was Lydia Hayes, Vivian's right-hand woman. She now looked at me like I was a walking deity. She had also become a world champion mental gymnast. Case in point. One morning, I was at my bar meticulously preparing a cup of pour-over coffee. Water temperature, flow rate, bloom time. I was in a zone. Lydia came in to drop off a file and froze, watching me with a look of profound solemnity. Only after I'd taken the first blissful sip did she speak. "Mr. Thorne, are you meditating?" I nearly choked on my coffee. And what? "I understand now," she said, a look of dawning realization on her face. "You're using the ritual of coffee making to embody the philosophy of simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Just like how you advised Ms. Atherton in the meeting, the simplest path is often the most effective. You're using this to maintain your mental clarity and your insight into the fundamentals of business." I stared at her. I just wanted a cup of coffee. I get it, she said, holding up a hand. "The truly wise always walk among us in plain sight. We appreciate your dedication, Mr. Thorne." She gave me a formal bow and backed out of the room. I stood there holding my coffee mug, utterly bewildered. Another time, I'd stayed up late watching the Champions League final and was fighting a yawn on my sofa. Naturally, Lydia witnessed it. She immediately adopted an expression of pained admiration. "Mr. Thorne, you were burning the midnight oil for the company again, weren't you?" "Huh?" I was completely lost. "You don't have to hide it from me," she said in a hushed tone. "Ms. Atherton rejected Mr. Thorne's proposal yesterday and made him redo it overnight. I'm sure you were up all night helping her strategize, advising her. That's why you're so tired. Your commitment to this company is truly inspiring." I just looked at her. "I was watching the soccer final." "The soccer final?" Lydia paused. Then her brain immediately cooked up a new narrative. "Of course! You were studying the management and operational models of top European clubs, their ironclad discipline and brilliant tactical coordination. There's much our company could learn from that." "Brilliant, Mr. Thorne. Absolutely brilliant." I opened my mouth and closed it. "Fine, whatever you say." There's no arguing with a professional fangirl. Still, through my new #1 fan, I did manage to learn a lot more about Vivian Atherton. "You know, it hasn't been easy for her," Lydia confided one afternoon after bringing me a slice of cheesecake. "She might seem untouchable now, but her childhood, well, it was rough." She told me Vivian's father was a titan of the previous generation of business, a ruthless, old-school patriarch. He had always been disappointed that his only child was a daughter. He pushed her relentlessly, demanding perfection in everything, but never offered a single word of praise. Vivian's mother had passed away when she was young. She grew up in a cold, affectionless environment, fueled only by a desperate need to prove her father wrong. "She has terrible insomnia and deep-seated anxiety," Lydia sighed. That's why she's so demanding of herself and everyone else. The truth is, she's just a scared little girl hiding inside an iron suit. Listening to Lydia, I pictured Vivian's perpetually tense face. So that's what was hidden beneath the armor. I looked down at the cheesecake in my hand. Maybe I could do more for her than just fix her headaches. That afternoon, an unwelcome visitor appeared in the president's office. A man with slick back hair, a loud silk shirt, and a chunky gold watch sauntered in. This was Chad Sterling, the heir to Sterling Industries and one of Vivian's biggest business rivals. "Vivi, baby, looking good," Chad said, plopping onto the sofa and crossing his legs, his eyes roaming freely over Vivian. Vivian didn't even look up from her file. "Do you have a point, Mr. Sterling?" "Hey, don't be like that," he said with a greasy smile. "Just checking in. Heard you're pulling your hair out over that Pioneer Square development deal. Need your knight in shining armor to come bail you out?" His tone was a slimy mix of condescension and flirtation. I was watering the plants in her office and paused, my hand hovering over a fern. Vivian's expression turned arctic. I didn't need telepathy to know she was furious. "This buffoon! The last thing I need is his help. I will land that Pioneer Square deal." "Thank you for your concern, Chad, but Atherton & Coney is perfectly capable of managing its own projects," she said, her voice flat. Chad's gaze shifted and landed on me. He looked me up and down with open contempt. "Well, Vivi, new hobby? Since when do you keep pretty boys in the office?" He winked at her. "What? Tired of real men like me? Decided you prefer the delicate, artsy type?" The temperature in the room plunged below zero. Lydia, standing by the door, went pale. Vivian's knuckles were white where she gripped her pen. I could hear a stampede of rage in her head. "You arrogant pig! How dare you talk about him like that? He's not a pretty boy. He's my wellness consultant." But she was trapped by professional decorum. Losing her cool would be admitting defeat. Seeing her vibrate with suppressed anger, I knew it was time to step in. I put down the watering can and walked over to Chad, a pleasant professional smile on my face. "Good afternoon, sir." Chad eyed me sideways. "Was I talking to you? I'm Ms. Atherton's personal wellness consultant, Jasper Thorne." I kept the smile plastered on my face, but my eyes were scanning his. "And if you don't mind me saying, sir, you have dark circles under your eyes, visible puffiness, a pale complexion, and an unsteady posture." With every word, Chad's smug expression curdled. "What the hell are you talking about?" He snapped like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Just offering a professional observation," I said, my smile widening. "You've been entertaining clients a lot recently, haven't you? Excessive drinking? And I'd wager you often feel a certain fatigue and exhaustion in your lower back, perhaps." Chad's face went from angry to alarmed. I went in for the kill. "Based on your presentation, you're suffering from severe adrenal fatigue. My advice, cut back on the alcohol, especially the cold beer. Try a cleaner diet, more lean protein, leafy greens, and maybe swap out one of those nightly cocktails for some chamomile tea." I clapped him on the shoulder, my voice full of mock concern. "Health is wealth, Mr. Sterling. You're a young man. You shouldn't burn the candle at both ends." You! Chad pointed at me, sputtering, his face a mottled purple. He was so angry he couldn't form a sentence. He wanted to lash out, but my words had hit too close to home. He couldn't deny them without risking further embarrassment in front of Vivian. Finally, he shot to his feet. He glared at me, then at Vivian, who was watching with a completely straight face, though I could see the faintest hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth. "You're a real piece of work, Atherton. This isn't over." He stormed out, leaving a trail of wounded pride. The office was quiet again. Lydia was looking at me with what could only be described as hero worship. Vivian cleared her throat and went back to her files, but my telepathy picked up a clear signal of amusement. "Nice one. That was perfect. Jasper has a sharp tongue. I like it. He gets a bonus tonight." I looked at her profile, the tips of her ears a telltale pink, and had to smother a laugh. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And my brand of wellness speak was apparently the perfect weapon. To celebrate landing the Pioneer Square deal, the company threw a massive party. As one of the event's secret weapons, I was told my attendance was not optional. The ballroom was a sea of glittering dresses and dark suits. Vivian had traded her power suit for a stunning silver evening gown. With her hair swept up, she was magnetic, the undisputed center of the universe. She moved through the crowd like a queen, a polite, distant smile fixed on her face as she navigated conversations with investors and partners. But I was the only one who knew she was running on fumes. Another toast. My face is going to freeze like this. This champagne is terrible. I want to go home. This guy's spittle is going to land on my dress. Gross. It's so loud. My head is starting to throb. I watched her from a corner, nursing a glass of sparkling water. She was a lone warrior in a glittering battlefield, her armor gleaming. Midway through the party, she was cornered by a group of executives, all eager to toast her success. She couldn't escape and drank glass after glass. Even though she was only taking small sips, the cumulative effect was starting to show. I saw her hand tremble slightly as she raised her glass. That was my cue. "Ms. Atherton," I said, stepping into the circle. The group turned to look at me. I smiled at the circle of eager executives. "Gentlemen, my apologies. Ms. Atherton has been dealing with some stomach issues lately, and her doctor has advised her to avoid alcohol. As her wellness consultant, I have to insist. I'll take this one for her." Without waiting for a response, I took the champagne flute from her hand and drained it. The men blinked, then broke into hearty laughter. "Well, Ms. Atherton, you've got yourself a dedicated consultant there, a personal bodyguard." Vivian just looked at me, her expression unreadable, but she didn't object. For the rest of the night, I became her designated drink shield. By the time the party wound down, my head was spinning, but Vivian had been spared. She was only slightly flushed, her eyes a little hazy. On the ride back, the chauffeur drove, while I sat in the passenger seat. Vivian was alone in the back. The car was silent. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was leaning against the window, the passing streetlights washing over her face. All the sharp edges, the icy control had melted away, leaving behind a profound, almost fragile exhaustion. She seemed to be asleep, then a faint dreamlike whisper of a thought drifted into my head. "Mom, I'm so tired. Why did Dad never hug me? I don't want to be number one. I just want some ice cream." The thoughts were so small, so full of a child's loneliness and pain. They felt like tiny needles in my own heart. For the first time, I truly understood what Lydia had told me. This invincible queen was, at her core, just a little girl who had never been taught she was loved. A cool breeze slipped through a crack in the window. I looked back and saw her curled up on the spacious leather seat, a small frown on her face. I hesitated for a moment, then shrugged off my suit jacket and reached back and gently draped it over her. She seemed to sense the warmth, stirring slightly and snuggling deeper into the fabric, her frown smoothing out. I turned back to the window, watching the city lights blur past, a strange mix of emotions churning inside me. Tonight, my boss didn't seem like a queen at all. The next morning, I walked into the office with a killer hangover. The first thing I saw was Vivian sitting on the sofa in my lounge, one hand pressed to her temple, looking even worse than she had at the party. "Morning, Ms. Atherton," I said. She looked up, her voice raspy. "Last night, thank you." "Part of the job," I said, heading to the wet bar and filling a small pot with water. I bypassed the coffee beans, instead pulling out a container of steel-cut oats, a small jar of honey, and a cinnamon stick from my bag. "What are you doing?" she asked, watching me with a confused look. "Making you breakfast," I said without turning around. "You have a hangover and your stomach is sensitive. No coffee today. You need something to settle things down." She didn't respond, but I heard her thoughts clearly. Oatmeal? He cooks? That's ridiculous. The company cafeteria has food. I ignored her, busying myself with the small induction burner in the lounge. Once the water was simmering, I stirred in the oats, letting them cook down slowly. Half an hour later, the air was filled with a warm, comforting scent of cinnamon and honey. I spooned a portion into a bowl and set it on the coffee table in front of her. Eat it while it's hot. Vivian stared at the steaming bowl for a long moment. I told you this was unnecessary, she said, her voice still laced with its default setting of disdain, but her mind was screaming a different tune. Oh my God, that smells amazing. It looks so good. My mom used to make me oatmeal like this. No, can't let him see I want it. I fought back a smile at her ridiculous pride. I put on a stern face. Really? Fine. If you don't want it, I'll just throw it out. I reached for the bowl. Don't touch it. Her hand shot out, covering the bowl protectively like a mother cat guarding her kitten. She glared at me, a silent warning in her eyes. Then, under my watchful gaze, she picked up the spoon and stiffly brought a small portion to her lips. The second it touched her tongue, I felt a massive emotional shift from her, like a dam breaking. It's perfect. This is the exact taste, just like I remember my mom's oatmeal. Her eyes, completely against her will, reddened. She quickly bowed her head, hiding her face behind her hair as she ate the rest in silence, mechanically, spoon after spoon until the bowl was completely empty. She scraped the sides clean. When she was done, she placed the bowl firmly on the table and resumed her icy mask. It was mediocre. I just looked at her. What are you staring at? She snapped, a little too defensively. My head still hurts. Get over here and do your job. If he keeps looking at me like that, I'm going to cry. You jerk. I sighed and walked over, my fingers finding the familiar points of tension on her temples. This time, I wasn't just trying to fix her headache. I was trying to smooth out the crumpled pieces of her heart, this fortress she had built around herself. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way in, through her stomach and through her soul. Part 3. The cheese rocket and the earlobe. After the oatmeal incident, things between Vivian and me shifted into a strange new territory. She was no longer just my boss, and I was no longer just her therapist. I took over her meals under the official guise of my wellness consultant duties. She still complained about every dish, but she cleaned her plate every single time. And my telepathy seemed to be getting an upgrade. Sometimes, even without physical contact, if I was close enough, I could catch fuzzy fragments of her thoughts. This was mostly entertaining, but also created a few close calls. One afternoon, I was working on her shoulders. She was leaning back with her eyes closed, looking completely relaxed. Suddenly, a crystal clear thought floated into my head. You know, in the 3rd grade, I wet my pants during the school play. God, why am I thinking about that? It's so embarrassing. Thank God nobody knows. I heard this top secret intel and I just broke. My shoulders started shaking and I couldn't stop a grin from spreading across my face. I got myself under control in a split second, but it was too late. The tiny crack in my professional facade had been spotted by the ever-vigilant Vivian Atherton. Her eyes snapped open, sharp as daggers. What are you smiling at? Nothing, I said immediately, my face a mask of innocence. You were definitely smiling, she said, sitting bolt upright and pinning me with her stare. Tell me, what were you thinking just now? Why was he smiling? I was thinking about the pants thing. Could he? No. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. There's no way he could know. I looked at her suspicious, panicked face, and my blood ran cold. Oops. I may have gone too far. The seeds of doubt, once planted, have a nasty habit of growing. From that day on, the way Vivian looked at me changed. She would stare at me thoughtfully, like I was a bizarre new species she was trying to classify. During our sessions, she became quieter, but her internal monologue grew louder, and it was all centered on one question. Can he actually hear my thoughts? Last time was a coincidence. It must have been. Maybe I should test him again today. She was making me a nervous wreck. Every session felt like walking a tightrope, terrified I'd make one wrong move and give everything away. But the inevitable finally arrived. She called me into her office, claiming she wanted to brainstorm a new project. As I worked on the tension in her neck, she began to lay out her grand vision in a dead serious tone. Jasper, I've been contemplating a business plan that will redefine our era. Here we go. The test begins. My internal alarms were blaring, but my hands kept up their steady rhythm. I've come to realize that Earth's resources are no longer sufficient for the ambitions of Atherton and Company, she continued, completely straight-faced. I'm preparing to launch the Atherton Lunar Initiative. Step 1 will be to acquire the development rights to the dark side of the moon. Lady, you're out of your mind. I was screaming with laughter internally, but on the outside, I had to project an expression of thoughtful consideration. The key to this plan, she said, pausing to gauge my reaction, is the development of a new type of rocket, one fueled entirely by artisanal cheese. I believe the concept has enormous potential. What do you think? Ha ha. Cheese rockets. I'm a genius. If he can hear me, he must be dying right now. Let's see how long he can keep a straight face. I was seconds away from a complete system failure. My fingers were trembling, but I held on. Ms. Atherton, your ideas are always so forward-thinking, very imaginative. A flicker of disappointment crossed her eyes. No reaction. Maybe I really am just overthinking it. She was quiet for a moment, clearly plotting her endgame. Suddenly, a thought sharp and clear as a bell, with a sly, commanding tone, shot through my brain. If he can really hear me, he will now immediately use the pad of his thumb to gently press my left earlobe. The command was too specific, too sudden, and after months of subconsciously following her mental instructions, my body had developed a Pavlovian response. My brain was screaming, "Don't do it! It's a trap!" But my hand, operating on its own traitorous accord, moved with perfect precision to the side of her head, and the pad of my thumb very gently touched her small, soft earlobe. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. The air in the office seemed to vanish. Time stopped. I was frozen, my mind a complete blank. I'm dead. So dead. I watched as Vivian's body went rigid. Slowly, ever so slowly, she turned her head to face me. Her face cycled through a spectacular series of colors, from pale white to flushed pink to furious red before settling on a shade of mortified teal. It was the most expressive I had ever seen her, and it was the expression of a woman witnessing my very public, very permanent social execution. You! Vivian's voice trembled. The finger she pointed at me trembled too. You heard all of it? Each word was squeezed out, her face a portrait of someone whose entire reality had just been shattered. I looked at her, at the raw, murderous fury mixed with sheer humiliation, and knew there was no point in lying. I pulled my hand back, took a step away, and sighed. Time to face the music. Yes, I said, nodding. From the very first session, whenever we make physical contact, I can hear you. So, her voice rose an octave, when I was mentally calling Roderick Thorne an incompetent... You heard that? I nodded. And when I was regretting that extra piece of cheesecake at lunch... You heard that too? I kept nodding. And while I was thinking about wetting my pants in the 3rd grade, her voice cracked and her face was so red it looked painful. I didn't dare nod this time. I just gave her a look that said, "You know I did." Ah! She finally broke. It was a strangled, suppressed scream. She clapped her hands over her face and sank to the floor, burying her head in her knees like a terrified ostrich. The office fell into a dead, ringing silence. I could hear the absolute chaos in her head. Kill him. I have to kill him and hide the body. This is the most humiliating moment of my entire life. But if I kill him, who will give me massages? Who will make me oatmeal? That monster, that liar. He's been laughing at me this whole time, but he helped me in that meeting. and he stood up for me with Chad. Her mind was a civil war, and her body was shaking. I watched her curled up in a ball on her expensive rug. The powerful, untouchable CEO was gone. In her place was a helpless, mortified girl, and my heart just broke for her. I walked over and crouched down in front of her, bringing myself to her level. "Vivian," I said softly. She didn't move, just pressed her face deeper into her knees. "I'll admit, at first it was kind of funny, like watching a reality show," I said quietly. "But then I heard the headaches, the insomnia, the stress, and I heard all the hurt you keep locked away inside." She flinched. "I wasn't laughing at you. I was just realizing that you're not made of steel after all." I reached out, hesitated, and then gently placed my hand on her head, stroking her hair like I was calming a frightened animal. "So you don't have to pretend to be so tough all the time. Not anymore." Vivian's shoulders began to shake violently. After a long, silent moment, she finally lifted her head. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swimming with tears she stubbornly refused to let fall. It was the first time I'd ever seen her look vulnerable. "Then you'll stay," she said, her voice thick and nasal. "Not because of the contract and not because you need the money. You'll stay because I'm telling you to. Do you hear me?" I looked into her shining eyes and saw an order, a plea, and a raw dependence she wasn't even aware of. I sighed. What choice did I have? When your pet cat is this proud, you just have to spoil it. I reached up and gently wiped away a single tear that had escaped and was tracing a path down her cheek. "I hear you, boss," I said, my voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Overtime," she blinked. I smiled. "This one's on the house." After the great unveiling, my relationship with Vivian entered a new, bizarrely harmonious phase. She was still the sharp-tongued, hard-hearted ice queen on the surface. But now all her contradictions were for me crystal-clear instructions. For instance, during a morning meeting, Vivian addressing her team, "I want the minutes from this meeting on my desk by end of day." Me passing by the conference room and catching her thoughts. "What a beautiful day. I wish I could just sneak out and see a movie. That new sci-fi looks good. Ugh, but I have to work." That afternoon, I knocked on her office door. "Ms. Atherton, the meeting minutes. Put them on the desk," she said without looking up. I set down the file, then pulled 2 movie tickets from my pocket and placed them on top. "And also, Lydia mentioned you have an important business gala tonight and require an escort. Here are the tickets." Vivian stared at the 2 tickets for the new sci-fi movie. She looked up at me, her face unreadable, but the tips of her ears were turning pink. She picked up the tickets, glanced at them, and then made a little huffing sound. "What kind of popcorn do you want?" I asked, trying not to grin. "Sweet and salty," she mumbled, turning her face toward the window. Another time, at a company dinner, a new hire, who didn't know any better, got drunk and decided to confess his undying love for Vivian. Her face instantly froze over, and she was about to verbally annihilate him. I walked over with a glass of water and stepped between them, smiling at the young man. "Buddy, maybe have some water. Ms. Atherton isn't interested in men who are less successful than she is." He started to argue, so I just read Vivian's mind and relayed the message. "And also, she thinks the plaid shirt you're wearing is hideous." The entire table went silent. The guy's face turned as colorful as his shirt. Behind me, Vivian had her head down, her shoulders shaking. I couldn't tell if she was angry or laughing. I just heard her thought, "Jasper is getting completely out of control." But also, that was awesome. Our relationship blossomed in this strange new dynamic of you pretend and I know everything. Until one day there was a complication. I was giving her a massage, my mind wandering to weekend plans. Should I take her hiking or to the beach? Hiking is probably too much work. She'll say it's fine, but complain internally the whole time. The beach is better. Ocean breeze, fresh seafood. She'd love that. Man, that dress she's wearing today is amazing. Her legs look a mile long. Lost in thought, I suddenly felt a sharp pinch on my arm. I blinked and looked down. Vivian's eyes were still closed, her expression serene as if nothing had happened. But her ears were the color of a ripe tomato, a cold, terrifying, and utterly insane idea began to form in my mind. Oh wait, is this thing contagious? Is it a two-way street now? As a test, I focused and thought as clearly as I possibly could. Vivian, if you can hear me, pinch me 3 times. The next second, 3 distinct, deliberate pinches on my arm. I stared at her. She slowly opened her eyes and stared back at me. The air in the room was thick with a chaotic mix of exhilaration and pure, unadulterated panic. Well, this was going to make things complicated. No, this was going to make things interesting. 6 months later, Jasper's Holistic Therapy Studio had its grand opening. Vivian Atherton, as the sole investor and unofficial co-owner, was there to cut the ribbon. A reporter called out, "Ms. Atherton, what made you decide to invest in such a small, unassuming business?" Vivian looked over at Jasper, who was giving a quick shoulder rub to an elderly woman. A warm, genuine smile lit up her face, a sight still rare enough to turn heads. She turned back to the cameras, her voice calm and clear. "Because the therapist here is psychic." The crowd gasped. Jasper's hand slipped, and he nearly sent the old woman's shoulder out of its socket. He whipped his head around, mouthing at Vivian, "Are you serious?" She just raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Her thoughts came through loud and clear. "Of course. The whole world should know how amazing you are. Get ready, Jasper. You're about to have a very, very long waiting list." Jasper looked at her, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Yes, ma'am, whatever the Queen wants."